I have been associated with a bunch of companies of different shapes and sizes. When I say that in terms of scale, the number of customers that we have reached out to, and that also brings in a certain difference in the way product management is approached in each of these companies, while the fundamentals continue to be the same. And something that I'd like to focus on in this conversation with everybody are more inclined and closer to the fundamentals. And I'm sure we also have an interesting case study, which hopefully will give you some insights into how we go about doing things. So, firstly, I'd like to cover my journey into product management. Like Nija said, I've been able to join a couple of dots before finding my calling at product management, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Skills that I have been able to identify either through personal experience or when I speak to product mentors, my colleagues, my reportees, and essentially figuring out what are the broad set of skill sets that are needed to be a rockstar PM. And hopefully, through maybe some nuanced conversations, we'll also be able to cover some specific areas. Like I said, we also have a case study, and I'd like to reserve some time for questions and answers. So majority of the focus is going to be on case study and question and answers, while I brush to some of the other aspects as we move along. This is something that I enjoy talking about. It's ABC of my early career. Yes, there was acting. Yes, there's Bangalore, and there was coding. I'll start from C. I'll just go backwards here, and somewhere it's probably related to the B aspect of it, which is being a Bangalorean. And for those of you who are joining us from outside of India, Bangalore is one of the epicenters in India for technology, for startups, and for product management. And this has been identified in some of the eminent product forums across the world. So while at least product management is a relatively new vocation in India, when I began my career, I started as a quintessential engineer. And then I started venturing into figuring what I truly wanted to do in life. While I enjoyed coding, my early stages were with Hewlett Packard, where I worked as a system software engineer, more on the Unix, C, and assembly level coding. That's what I started with. I had the privilege of filing a couple of patents as well. I had an exciting journey while I had other callings as well. In parallel with my stint at HP, I co founded a theater team along with a bunch of friends in Bangalore, and we toured across India and did a bunch of exciting projects. I wanted to pursue arts as a full-time vocation. So I moved out of the coding space temporarily. I attempted at arts. We did a bunch of things, but I eventually figured that it's not sustainable, it's not viable. And maybe those were my early signs of being a product manager where you have to learn to ruthlessly prioritize. And that's something that I started doing at that stage where I prioritized for what is it that I wanted to do in the next stages of my career. So I put a pin on doing full-time arts and I ventured back into the space of coding. I joined a brand marketing and design firm in Bangalore called Lazaro, where I started as a coder. I switched from system level coding to web technologies, app development, web app development. And I eventually moved into the space of product management, except it wasn't called product management. I largely interfaced with clients. I was able to understand the requirements, and I hired a tech team internally that helped in developing those requirements into features. So I think that journey for me was very pivotal. It was essential for me to understand that we do need people who are able to sort of walk between multiple worlds, and that's something that I got as a direct experience. I continued, although along with this journey, I continued being a theater practitioner, which means I was continuing with other theater teams. I also ventured into corporate training, where structured communication, especially in the space of management, is what I specialized in, using theater as a means of communication. I did this experiment with life for about 3.5 to 4 years before I pursued a full-time flagship MBA from ISB Hyderabad. I did that and I graduated in 2018. And it is during my B school experience that I discovered that there is a respectable vocation for what I did accidentally, and that's called as product management. And I was able to join a lot of dots internally, and suddenly things started making sense in terms of being multi-skilled and being able to put all of that to the fore while showcasing high degree of ownership and presentation skills. And I'll definitely be covering some of that as we move along. So that's broadly what I would call as the ABC of my early career. My journey into what I would call as on paper designation product management, while I started doing product management much earlier than this. I think started with an on-campus placement into Flipkart, where search as a problem statement. I thought it was a very fascinating area. I was leading this for about 1.5 years. I also was part of the core team, which launched a few platforms, subsidiary platforms in Flipkart, like the Flipkart wholesale platform. We had another platform called as toogood.com, where I was part of the core discovery experience charter in each of these spaces. Another key area that I worked on at Flipkart was category experiences, which is books and precious jewelry from an end-to-end customer experience with a product point of view. So essentially creating an actionable roadmap for every single step of the customer journey for these two categories. I joined Amazon during the pandemic and incidentally moved out during the pandemic. I was there for close to 1.5 years where I was leading the India product team for a program called as Found It on Amazon. Found It is essentially, think of it like Instagram meets Pinterest. Essentially, it's a content feed that helps create or instigate interest for products rather than creating or sort of creating a space of simply having a transactional experience for customers. So that's something that I worked on from three problem statements point of view. One is building a state of the art and a delightful customer experience on the feed, interfacing with content creators or influencers that enable them to upload and create great content, and intelligently plugging this content that's available and meeting the customer in their shopping experience across the shopping funnel at Amazon. So that's something that I was doing at Amazon. And I very recently moved into toothsi. I started my journey with toothsi in February. Toothsi and Skinsy essentially is a D2C health tech company where we build products and services for customers. We have started with oral and skincare. And just to give a little bit more about this in 20 seconds, in oral care, we have started and are current market leaders for invisible teeth aligners. So if you've heard of Invisalign, which is a US company, in India, toothsi is the current market leader in this space. We also have a couple of over-the-counter products like teeth whitening kits and a few other things related to this, electric toothbrushes. In terms of Skinsy, we are the first company in the world to launch laser hair removal from home. So essentially, it's again a service which we are customizing based on the customer's skin and requirements and condition. We also are shortly going to be launching a couple of over-the-counter products. We'll be moving internationally and launching soon. We are also, as we speak, developing a retail experience center in Bangalore. We're starting with Bangalore on this. So a lot of exciting problem statements in this particular space. And health tech is an area that I'm passionate about, which I think makes problem solving a lot more relatable to pretty much everybody I meet. Unlike esoteric problem statements that I was solving for at Flipkart and Amazon, this journey has been extremely exciting. And I'm looking forward to what's in store for this. Cool. So I think one of the bits that I have been able to uncover, and like I said, I've been an accidental product manager. I started as an IT guy. I started as a coder. I then did a bunch of things in the art space. Fun fact, my alternate job offer to being a product manager was being a radio jockey in one of the leading radio stations in Bangalore. And I went ahead with product management only because it was technology is at my heart and it's something I wanted to be closer to. So I've been able to, through experiments and after having worked in startups like the one I mentioned, where we also incubated an e-commerce company in the space of superbikes. It's called bigbadbikes.com. It still exists. Please check it out. So having worked in startups, having worked in medium-sized companies, moving to large size like Flipkart, and mammoth-sized companies like Amazon, what I've been able to uncover through these different experiences, working with colleagues, veterans who have been around in the space for a longer time, I've sort of created a very simple list of skills that are sort of required to be a PM. Not all of them are needed for you to become a PM. So I think what I'd like to share is that depending on the company that you're joining, starting from there, the size of the company, the stage at which the company is in, is it a startup? Is it a large established company like one of the FANG companies? So based on the company, within the company based on the specific problem statement areas, which is essentially the products that you'll be working on. And then specifically within that, the stage at which the particular product is in, your skill sets could change, or you might need to shine a lot more in certain more skill sets compared to the others. So this list, while it's not a comprehensive list, it's a fairly sound list of a variety of skill sets. And based on the kind of problem statements that you're solving and the three parameters I spoke about, some skills are needed more than the other. Right. So that's just something that you'll have to be mindful of. And I can perhaps take a few questions in the Q&A as we get there. All right, so before we begin, for those of you who relate to cricket, if not, we can always provide an example. I'm a huge cricket fan. I'm a buff. I watch a lot of it, and I know that the IPL match is going to start in the next 15 minutes. But yeah, otherwise, this is a picture for those of you who have evolved and grown watching cricket. Some of you might know some faces might not be familiar. But if you can drop in the chat box your answer to this question, who is the best of them all? Right? And I'll probably just call out the names in case you don't recognize faces directly. There's Jacques Kallis, there's Sachin Tendulkar, there's Muthaiya Muralidharan, there's Glenn McGrath, there's Virat Kohli, there's Dhoni there, there's Jonty Rhodes, and there's Ravindra Jadeja, all across different countries. So I'm not biased to just India. So can you just drop in who's the greatest cricketer? I see a lot of Dhoni fans. Yesterday's match might have been very depressing for you. Virat Kohli, yes, I'm a hardcore RCB fan being from Bangalore. So yes, Virat Kohli. I see ABD coming in. That's interesting. Gaurav says you don't know why there is Jadeja here. That's very interesting. All right, one and only Sachin. A lot of Sachin fans. There are UV. All right, Saurav says depends on what the situation demands. Very interesting. I'll probably give it 30 seconds more. JK, I'm assuming Anshya is talking about Jacques Kallis. Okay. I'm not joking, but yeah. All of them are best in their respective areas. That's Kushal who's saying that. All right. Sachin is God. I agree. All right. So yeah. So I think some of you have gotten this, that you could be fans of a certain set of people who are good in their own disciplines, right? The follow up, a good product manager or a product, the signs of you being a product manager is if you follow up a direct question like this with a follow up question, which says, what's the situation, right? So best is very contextual to where you are. If some of you recall the time when pretty much the entire Indian batting order was dependent on Sachin, and the day Sachin gets out early, you see a collapse and India is almost invariably going to lose the match. So it really depends on what the outcome that you're searching for. If it's personal track records, then maybe they're the best in their own spaces. But what is the potential contribution that each of them make in order to help that their specific team? And this is, of course, specific countries, but you can take this to county cricket, to league matches like the IPL and so on and so forth. What is the contribution that they're making? Right. So the perspective of a product manager here, right? And if I had to take an overall and a generic context, Sachin, Dhoni, Virat are known more for their batting skills. They're perhaps batting specialists. Dhoni is also a good keeper, but he's not the best keeper. He's a good keeper. Right? Jonty Rhodes is the world's best fielder that's there. That's great. Muthaiya Muralidharan and Glenn McGrath are great bowlers. One's a spinner, one's a pace bowler. And there's Jacques Kallis and there's Jadeja. Both of them that stand out in their own spaces. Some of you have called this out, but essentially both of them are what we call as all-rounders, right? Why are all-rounders important to cricket? Why did they even evolve, right? Why are they needed? Why not have in 11, 5 based on the pitch, 5 specialist bowlers and 5 specialist batsmen? And one could be a wicket keeper or a batsman, right? Why do we need these all-rounders in the team? And if you have noticed, in the past 5 years, especially with the evolution of shorter formats of the game, where bad days or test cricket, where you have time to redeem yourself, doesn't exist as much. Like Sahil saying this right, like good days and bad days, it sort of takes that out of the equation. What all-rounders bring to the table is they are essentially the glue between what specialists can't do, or what specialists are sort of, if it's a bad day, what they sort of counteract for. You can rely on all-rounders to do at least one thing. Like Jadeja is also known for his phenomenal fielding capabilities. If not for batting or bowling, he's going to contribute from his fielding to take wickets. While historically Jack Callis is probably the greatest of all time in terms of being an all-rounder, in today's playing days, it's probably Jadeja who's easily the best player of all time, right? And I say this with conviction because he's somebody who's able to contribute with the bat, with the ball, with fielding, and now with captaincy if you're following the latest IPL season. Right. So I think there's so much well-roundedness. Ben Stokes is a good example too. You're right about it. Right. So moving away from cricket, but essentially drawing focus to the point that all rounders are those set of folks who fill the gaps in whatever is needed in the current state of the team. And quintessentially, product managers, and this is a term that I've been, essentially saying for a very long time, product managers are specialist generalists. While it's a mouthful and probably takes a bit to register, think about it. You are creating generalists who are special at being generalists. And that's what all rounders in cricket also do. So while I've spoken about that and shifting focus away from cricket to perhaps something that is more applicable in the current setup for product management, while I understand there are a lot of companies, even outside of IT, outside of companies that are building IT-based products, which is either B2B SaaS companies, B2C companies, e-com, whatever have you. While I do understand that even mechanical engineering and electrical and a lot of different companies are now exploring product management, I think as a vocation, maybe in the past decade and a half, it's evolved more in the IT space. So in the context of this conversation, I'm going to stick to that, right? But it is applicable outside of it. So I'm going to stick to that for now. The number one skill in my experience and from what I have seen, and I want to put right up there, is high stakeholder management. It's probably one of the most underrated skill sets because while you continue to be the owner for your area, right, you focus so much on working towards fighting for what the right solution is. You're working with multiple teams, and that's something that we'll focus on. It's a product manager that understands to a certain extent what an engineer does, what a design folks do, what business analysts do, what business teams do, what leadership requires. And you're sort of joining all of those dots. And while you might have a certain learned point of view, like I said, you're the glue between so many different disciplines. Your point of view essentially becomes something that's perhaps most refined, most pristine, and most learned, right? So having the ability to connect with each one of them, and all of them might not agree with your point of view, while you still work with them and make your point across, essentially influencing without authority, and is exactly what stakeholder management is. So doing that and being able to do that effectively, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated skill sets that a PM should have. Ruthless prioritization. That's something that I spoke about early days where I had to ruthlessly prioritize based on my roadmap for life. And it's something that becomes almost muscle memory once this is done in practice. It's harder said than done, right? Because it also stems from what you do, which is point number one. Each stakeholder could have a different priority, but you need to ensure that they're all on the same page. And there could be hundreds of different requirements, but there are only those many resources that are available. So really focusing on what is the immediate here and now action, essentially being able to take 100 list of things to do, break it down in terms of applying a certain logic to it, which could be different based on the company stage and the product that you're working on, and looking at creating a short term, medium term, and a long term point of view for all of the initiatives. And really doing this on the fly and doing this every day is something that I would categorize as ruthless prioritization, right? It's not just prioritization, it's ruthless prioritization. Customer advocate. I think another word that I would like to add here is relentless customer advocate, right? We might come across hundreds of different things to do. Business might have a different point of view, data might say something, but what we do is talk to customers, have a customer point of view. Product managers are relentless advocates for solving for customer problem statements, even if it means optimizing for or dropping some of the initial stages, optimizing for some of the backend bits. You'd be surprised to learn that even today, so many of the backend systems in extremely evolved companies like Flipkart and Amazon are run on Google Sheets and Excel sheets, only because that's the only amount of bandwidth that we have. And we'd like to focus that much more on ensuring that customers have a delightful experience. Fun fact, and you can look this up, early versions of SpaceX, and I mean this, rocket science was also on Excel sheets, right? So those people who look at Excel sheets in a bad connotation, believe me, it's a great place to be. It's a good starting point. So advocating for customers is number one. Being able to articulate the why of something. As you evolve further, and perhaps the weightage for this increases as the evolution of the product happens, or the evolution of the company or the product stage happens, or your own personal evolution happens. Being able to truly articulate, and there'll be plenty of signals for this. There could be primary research, there could be secondary research, customer insights, whatever it is. And then you sort of start backing this with data, and then being able to articulate why, and using data and insights as a means of driving your point for better stakeholder management, rather than leaving something to a gut feeling, which is something that most founders and early stage PMs and early stage products start with. And then you sort of start learning from those mistakes or learning from those successes, and then using data to back it, such that you stop having conversations about your opinion versus mine, but essentially looking at data as a means of articulating the why of you're doing something. Process optimization. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but quite often you might find, based on product managers being able to think in a structured way, we are immediately able to adapt and adopt into new environments and recognize that there are gaping holes even when it comes to processes. So process optimization is also a good skill set to have for a PM. Presentation skills, I've spoken about this. While it is related to stakeholder management, for you to being able to connect, presentation skills doesn't mean just being able to put a good PPT together and connecting with a certain audience that you're talking with, but it's also the ability to use articulation. If it's just writing a good PRD stands for a product requirements document, being able to write a well thought through PRD, right? Using writing as a means of helping you structure your thoughts. So essentially, presentation skills covers those aspects as well. But this also spans from even basic things like interviewing to representing yourself on job forums like LinkedIn, the way you represent yourself personally as a brand, and for you to be a spokesperson for your brand. Leadership is another aspect, probably the second last on my list here, would be leadership, which is the ability to influence while you have authority. As product managers, it's harder because you are working with, or you'll be leading a bunch of product managers, each of them who not necessarily have the necessary authority to influence teams, especially stakeholder teams, right? So how is it that you work with them in order to drive ownership, being able to enable them in order to deliver what they are doing, and inculcating skills which are product 101. So that's again something that comes up. Perhaps those who are looking at long-term product managers or experienced product managers would relate a little more to this. And the last one would be innovation. Innovation is the ability to think creatively within boundaries, right? Creativity is often misrepresented. You can always have creative ideas, but what innovation is to think about all of those creative ideas within a certain set of constraints and being able to solve for problems and using technology as a means of scaling those solutions in order to create delightful experiences for your customers. And so that's something that I would define as innovation. And these for me have been sort of tricks of the trade and some of the core skill sets that I've been able to observe. And while you might find a lot of other skill sets that conventional blog posts and forums and a lot of talks tell you about, very few will actually tell you about stakeholder management. Some might talk about prioritization and tell you about using a framework like RICE and whatnot. But the ability to constantly keep doing this and be ruthless at it is again something that not many are going to tell you. And that's something that I've been able to learn from experience. And I've had the privilege of sharing this with you. Moving on to the next set of things. Product management, the non-engineering story. I think I saw a couple of questions, and even prior to this, common set of questions that I often get asked on forums like this or in LinkedIn or when I connect with PMs or aspiring PMs is it okay for non-engineers to pursue product management? The example I often give, and this is a movie that is one of my favorite movies in the animated space, which is Ratatouille. where there's this common phrase that they keep talking about, that everybody can cook. I think anybody can be a PM. Product management is more of a mindset. It's more of a process rather than a hard skill. And the more you inculcate in, like for me, product management has almost become a part of who I am. And most of the problems that I approach solving, now I do it invariably, even without thinking from a product management point of view. An example that I can talk about, right off the bat is very recently I renovated my house. It's a joint family that I stay in. 4 generations together share a roof. It's an apartment, so there are constraints that come in there, unlike a private house. And essentially use data, my sense of observation of how everybody, like my grandmother to my daughter, and how they use each space, electrical requirements, internet requirements, the aesthetics, the choice of flooring, the choice of fittings that we put in the kitchen and bathrooms, all of them based on product management thought process. And I don't think engineering was needed there, right? So a common question is, which is the next slide, is an IT background. Do I come from an IT background? And is that essential for you to get into product management? Here's how I'm going to put it, right? So do I come from an IT background? Yes, I have higher chances of becoming a PM thanks to the industry biasness towards IT background people. This is what's commonly spoken about. No, I can still crack PM roles if I learn tech jargons. As a PM, my key role is to understand the language, right? So here's how I'm going to break it down, right? While there's a lot of text here and you can move to the next slide, having an IT background is an advantage in today's landscape. It's rapidly changing, and 3 years from now, things could be a bit more different. So I would say having an IT background is an advantage. Not having an IT background is not a disadvantage, which means it's almost a normal, it's like a level playing field for everybody who's not having an IT background. And as long as you can develop a core set of skills, you don't have to do an engineering course for this. And the IT 101 list that's mentioned here, and I'm aware, and I've gone through the MasterCamp curriculum that's been designed, that's going to start shortly. I think that's doing a great job of covering some of the fundamentals. And now that I sort of have been away from a coding experience for a couple of years now, almost a decade that I've not coded directly, I think the list that's mentioned here and what's being covered in MasterCamp, as long as you're familiar with them, you should be good to go in most companies. Maybe a Google requires you to be a level deeper. I can't think of anything where a certain course at Coursera or any of the popular forums, teaching forums that are there, that you can't take and sort of, be familiar with terminologies and technologies that will enable you to have a meaningful conversation with engineers who are, by the way, going to be key stakeholders in your product management journey. Right. So that's what I would want to submit on IT background. Same thing for data analytics. I'm going to skip over this slide in the interest of time, and you can go to the next one as well, where again, it's similar to this. It's good to have a background because while you move ahead in your product management journey, it's knowing and understanding the language of data is important. What I would put it as on the side of no, and I have seen people even from a design background, those who come from NIFT and some of the very popular institutes from design and are hardcore designers make their way into product management. Being able to ask the right set of questions to your respective data analysts or business analysts or MIS engineers, whatever they are, as long as you're able to ask the right set of questions, you should be good to go from a data point of view. Nevertheless, I think, again, as a beginner in your product management journey, it's good to have a certain set of skill sets and a familiarity. And again, these core concepts that are mentioned below in the yellow box, those that are also going to be covered in the MasterCamp course, I think should be more than enough for you to be able to kickstart your journey. And like they say, there's no better learning opportunity than experience. And you'll sort of learn to start curating where you are as you start your journey on product management. Design background, again, very similar. You don't need to be able to create high fidelity mocks with beautiful color and fonts. As long as you're able to discern between user experience, which is UX, and UI, it's absolutely okay. It's okay to create bare bone white and gray boxes as long as you're able to articulate. And like I said, again, having a very good understanding of why a certain element is important in that screen at that point in time, rather than flooding that particular screen with hundreds of different options. Right? Think about simplified experiences that you have used, right? Like simple things like Uber, which the biggest call to button there is selecting your cab and booking a cab. right? It's so easy. They don't complicate that experience with hundreds of different options and things that are running in the backend. So as long as you're able to discern between this, it should be fine. And again, these sort of basics that are mentioned below should be sufficient for you to start your journey. Similar to research, I dare say that having a customer research, and since I spoke about being a relentless customer advocate, is a quintessential skill set for a product manager. If you do have familiarity with customer research or you come from a research background, it's a skill set that any company, maybe earlier stage companies and startups, will be able to value significantly because it gives you the ability to directly connect with customers, draw their feedback. Quite often you'll find, and I'll quote Henry Ford on this, where he talks about if you ask customers what they want, they'll say they want faster horses, right? So quite often you'll find in a product management experience, customers are expressing a certain intent of what they want, but what they need could be something that's unexpressed, right? So being able to discern between the two is something a good customer research person would do, and it's a good skill set to have as a product manager. So we're going to do a quick, fun case study that I wanted to talk about. I've been thinking about how do we go about it, and maybe I can just start off with one question and 30 seconds for these answers. Can you name the top 2 or 3 apps that you use on a very regular basis on your mobile phones every day? And I stick to mobile phones. I know there are desktop apps and experiences. Top 2, 3 apps that you use. Fun apps that you could use for recreation, that you do for any of the requirements that you have. I see a lot of Zomato, Swiggy. Yeah, we are close to dinner time, so I do understand. Some people have spoken about some payment related apps. I see a lot of Paytm, GPay, Instagram, Telegram, Snap, YouTube, TED Talks. Very interesting. Yeah, I actually do agree. TED has a very good app, which I enjoy using. Splitwise, understandable. LinkedIn, cool. I think the app that has stood out for me is WhatsApp, right? So you can stop with your answers. I think the most word cloud common one that I saw was WhatsApp, and I'll probably stick to WhatsApp for this exercise. So let's do a real quick exercise here. You are the new appointed head of product for WhatsApp. Okay, so you are the head of product for WhatsApp. If you were to build a feature, and maybe for the sake of clarity and context, I'll stick to WhatsApp India, just for the sake of this conversation. I'll stick to WhatsApp India because as a product manager and as a user have also done a lot of India-based apps. So you are the head of product for WhatsApp India. What is what is the first initiative or feature that you would like to build for users or customers in the India ecosystem? So take whatever approach that you want to for this. Maybe take about 4 to 5 minutes. Think about this from a product manager's point of view, based on everything that we have discussed. I'll probably reserve about 5 minutes for this, and then we'll move on to one quick step right after. Please don't put your answers in the text box. Vivek, thanks for dropping that. It led me to it. Just do this activity on a piece of pencil and paper, and just do this as an activity by yourself, and I'll lead this on to something. So please don't drop your answers yet in the chat box. I will revert to that in some time. I'm setting a timer on my phone. Sure, Kavya. The task is you are the newly appointed head of product for WhatsApp India. You've been asked to come up with a new feature that you would like to launch based on your experience, whatever is it that you want to do. What is that feature? Think about that and approach it from all the skills that we have discussed. And just take about 5 minutes to put it on pencil and paper, and then we can get to actually interacting with one or two of you to get that forward. I hope that clarifies. Here's an interesting situation that has evolved. I am now going to role play. Since I come from the background of theater, I can do that. But you should also keep role playing in your experience as a product manager, especially when you're sort of switching between things. I'm going to be playing the role of Mark Zuckerberg, right? And as Mark, I'm visiting India, and there are a bunch of things that are happening. There's a conference, and I've done this. and you enter an elevator. So essentially the concept of an elevator pitch. So you enter an elevator, you have about 2 minutes. It's the 40th floor to ground floor. So it's roughly going to take about 2 minutes. It's just Mark and you. And you need to pitch what you think is the product. There's a Google Sheet that's going to be shared in the chat box. Ayush has just shared this Google Sheet. What I'd like you to do is to just drop your name and write an elevator pitch, right? So please be mindful of it. Just write a very basic elevator pitch for what you think the feature should be. And the one that catches my interest and think what I find is most relevant, I'd like to have a conversation with you. And let's just do a fun give and take of this particular thought process. So I hope you're able to see this. I hope you're able to access the Google Sheet. If you don't, please let us know. And please drop in your name and an elevator pitch of what you think the product should be. All right, I see a couple of entries already. I see an interesting. Okay, I see a few people in the chat saying that they're not able to access the form. In case you're facing difficulty of that, you can drop it in the chat here, and I'll probably use that. I'll refer to both of them and I'll pick somebody. It's fine. So you can probably say elevator pitch : and then write yours there. I see a couple of very interesting options here on the lines of some use cases. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to probably pick from those who have already placed something. Elevator pitch. I see Siddharth here is Ayush is saying hi, Mark already. It's very interesting. Thanks, Ayush. All right. In the interest of time, I'm going to pick one of this that was very interesting. And since we are talking about time, I'll pick something that was more associated with time. Please keep this going. It's a great exercise to think about constantly. And it's just fun to do with your friends as well. I'm probably going to pick Shruti Shah. So Shruti Shah, if Ayush Vaibhav, if you can help, if you can pick Shruti, and Shruti, if you're willing to come on camera or just on audio, I'd like to have a conversation with you. So if you can just drop that yes or no in the chat window here, and that way somebody can help and panel you. Tell me more about your idea.
Yeah, so I was thinking obviously friend plans and any kind of plan that are made on WhatsApp. But now a lot of work meetings, work schedule also goes on WhatsApp. So if you could add in calendar app, you don't have to add a specific meeting. So a public you're making set of, let's say, 20 people. You can have access to the calendars and then you can propose the plan accordingly. So first, 10 people are going to be like, can't do plus, then for other people, that's not. So our process can be streamlined.
Awesome. What was your insight? And for those who weren't able to catch all of it, I think I was just picking up from the bits that I could make out and from what she shared on the Google Sheet, which was around integration with the calendar, where it's especially when you're working with a larger set of people. How do we have calendar being integrated? Because a lot of us make plans, and if that can be integrated directly, that would be a good feature to have, right? So Shruti, so this is clearly coming in from a personal experience. Is that right?
In my last organization, a lot of people used to directly text you on WhatsApp when you want to sponsor one that was specifically meant for work. And then especially at those times, because if you want to, you'll probably be out or you're on a holiday. It's very hard to get your calendar and then back or remember that 4-5 days later that easier to me on a Saturday or a Sunday and tell me that let's study Thursday. I don't have to be at home. I don't have to go back to my calendar. I can do that from one.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you one question. So what you've done is you're an advocate for the customer here. You're presenting a point of view maybe a certain pain area that customers are facing, and you have a bunch of use cases that you called out, right? Like vacation, work, early stage startups who are primarily using WhatsApp as a means of
Right.
communicating and keeping track of things. I think that's what I'm taking away from this. Great points that you make, right? And there were probably hundreds of different ideas that were there in this space. What's the one thing that you're trying to improve? Essentially, how would you measure? Say you're able to launch this. What are you going to measure?
The first thing I would measure is the number of business accounts that are there and how many of those accounts are now using calendar.
That's number of users. What's the outcome? That's from an input perspective. From an output perspective, what is it that you'd like to measure?
So, WhatsApp perspective, what I would.
Yeah, you're the PM for WhatsApp. So what would you measure?
Need a minute to think.
Shruti, you might have to type that out. Sorry, I wasn't able to catch that on audio. Others, for those of you who are listening in, what's for you the measurability for this feature? For those of you who have been able to understand this, what do you think you'd be able to measure?
Ashank, I think what would be helpful is if you can just summarize what was said, what's in the Excel sheet once again, because I think a lot of us were unable to catch what
Sure. The pitch, I'll probably paste it here. Just give me a moment. So this was the pitch that was there. And she spoke about a few examples while she came on call about how there are a lot of customer-based insights that she used. So she spoke about startups, business users, about those that are probably on vacation and want to find an easy way to keep track of things as soon as they're back. So these are great use cases. So what I see is that there is a lot of customer backing this. There is possibly some data points that we're thinking about. What I want to essentially get to, and probably will stop with the case study when it comes to this. I personally, by the way, the reason why I picked this particular thing and why I picked WhatsApp is this is one of the questions that was asked during my interview while I joined Flipkart. And I think the answer that I was able to present, and sort of firstly the thought process and then the answer that I was able to present, is what helped me crack a role at Flipkart as a senior product manager. So it's a question that's quite close to me, and it's one of my favorite interview questions. And what I was talking to the team here is that in the MasterCamp series, I would like to present my answer and what I presented, and love to hear participants' point of view when it comes to that particular approach. So while we wait for Shruti to sort of drop the measurability, and for any of you who want to take a dig at what is the end result of integrating calendars into WhatsApp, what is that one metric or two metrics that you would like to look at? I'd be very keen on learning this, so we can keep that conversation happening in parallel. I'm aware. So Vaibhav, you can share the screen again and the presentation, and we can move on to the next bit of things that we are doing. So while we've quickly brushed on my brief journey and the fact that I had a rather unconventional journey into product management, and I pride myself in being an accidental product manager, I spoke about experience-based and industry backward insights as to the core fundamental aspects of the key skill sets for a product manager. What I want to leave you with, right? And you'll start seeing that when I spoke about innovation, leadership, stakeholder management, it all alludes to one point, which is IQ is important because you need to start thinking intelligently about problems to solve, data to back you up, asking the right kind of questions, having the ability to read insights. EQ helps you climb the ladder faster because stakeholder management and some of the other key skill sets come into play. So that's something that I want to focus on. As a product manager, focusing on why rather than how and when, which are more sort of process related things and project management related aspects, will help you move faster. And having absolute clarity and conviction on the problem statements that you want to solve for. This again goes back to you being a relentless customer advocate and also being able to relentlessly or ruthlessly prioritize. And while you do all of these things, being a good all-rounder, you solve for everybody. You solve for your customers and users, for your business, for your team, for your company, and importantly, yourself. Right. So I just wanted to leave all of you with these key takeaways. And on that note, I hope this real quick session into product management has been able to at least instill a certain curiosity. There's no way you could have developed expertise or in-depth knowledge of what a PM 101 is, as long as it has instilled curiosity. That I think is a job done, and that's probably my measurability of what I wanted out of this session. So that's something that's there. I will read each of these inputs that you're adding, and probably in the Q&A, I'll probably leave some of my comments to that. And on that note, I'll hand it over to Vaibhav, who has a few things to speak about. Vaibhav, Ayush, over to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Ashank. This was quite helpful. Good insight into what's going to come in the product management bootcamp. Ashank will be there himself, leading a couple of modules there. So we don't want to share too much. I'll just drop the link to the bootcamp. You can check out the website if you're interested. These are the highlights to the bootcamp. And if you're looking to transition into product, or if you want to build a career in product management, there's a boot camp that we are going to start at the end of April. So I'll just drop the link in the chat and we can take it from there. Meanwhile, any questions that are there, we can look to answer.
Yeah. We have a couple of minutes for Q&A and we can do
Yes.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sahil is asking, do you think entrepreneurs make good product managers?
Well, yes. Entrepreneurs have a key sense, like a good entrepreneur, like you can be an entrepreneur, but I think a good entrepreneur is somebody who's been able to identify a core need of a customer, either articulated or unarticulated, being able to translate that, finding a solution for that, using technology to scale that particular problem, scale the solution to that problem, and being able to, your immediate stakeholders will be your team, but importantly, your investors, assuming you're going in for funding. So being able to present that effectively and while managing your bunch of stakeholders. So I think having entrepreneurial experience or working in early stage startups is a great place for you to sharpen and hone your product skills.
Thanks for sharing that, Ashank. There's one more question. I am a non-technical guy from chemical production experience. So if we generalize this question, people from across backgrounds, I think we've covered a lot of this in our slides today, but just want to reiterate once again. So people with no prior technical or product experience, how is their transition into product management from your lens?
So I think something that I've seen often work well, like I said, as long as you have skill sets, unlike other disciplines where you need, maybe as a coder, you need to know a couple of languages if you want to work for a company. Product management is more of a methodology. It's more of a certain mindset that's needed while you approach solving for problems while working with a bunch of people and pretty much influencing without authority while you're at it. It's applicable across the industry. So as long as you have the relevant skill sets, you're already relevant. You're already through from a fitment point of view. Now, how do you sort of make your first break into it? Maybe one of the good methods to do it, I remember seeing one of the questions very early on, is an MBA important? I'd say even people without an MBA are able to crack product management roles, except today, because the vocation hasn't matured completely. It's not as mainstream as some of the other established vocations that have been around. An MBA degree does provide you an easier access into product management. Again, it's an advantage, but not having an MBA is not a disadvantage, right? So it does make life a bit easier, but it's not a prerequisite. What an MBA also does is it's a good holistic view of looking at businesses and problem statements. So I think that skill set point of view also a product manager would resonate with an MBA. But your first entry could be if you have any other relevant skill set. So a good transition could be if you are a data analyst, if you are somebody who's a designer, if you're somebody who's a program manager, which is you're already a generalist in some way, and you are working closely with product teams, right? When you work closely with product teams, what you do get is the ability to connect with product managers to understand the thought process behind that, and then being able to start working towards honing those skill sets yourself. And if the company supports you to transition internally, great. You can apply for it, find the relevant skill sets, get feedback, find product mentors, and then make that transition into product management. The other way to look at it is start with early stage companies where they would be willing to invest in you as long as you have relevant skill sets and sort of offering a product role to you. And then once you have sort of tried your hand at it, you can then find relevant options in bigger companies.
Thank you, Ashank. One more question that keeps coming up is, what is the difference between a B2B and a B2C product manager, and what are the difference in the skills that are required?
That's a good question. I don't think there's a short answer to it, but what I would say, like simple breadcrumbs that I'd like to drop, is that B2B have much longer build cycles because your customers are not everyday customers. They might use your products, right? That particular business might be shipping certain products which their own customers are using, but your direct business customers, your cycles are much longer. You don't have as many. For example, an Amazon and Flipkart have millions of daily customers who are interacting with it, which means there's that much more richness of data and different spectrum of users. So your cycles are different. And as a product manager, ability to be more agile in a B2C environment is valued more compared to B2B environments, right? So B2B would be your ability to think more long term from day one, whereas in B2C, you have the ability to be a little bit more agile. I think prima facie, that's the difference. But fundamentals and core PM 101s remain the same. All the skill sets I spoke about, they remain exactly the same. Perhaps this is the only difference. It's like, again, going back to cricket, it's like just difference in pitch. Your skill set of being a batsman or being a bowler is the same. It's just the pitch conditions change. So you just have to alter your technique a little bit. That's the only difference.
That's a great analogy. Thanks, Ashank. One last question before we let you go is any resources that you would suggest people to start brushing up their product skills? They're like starting out their product journey. So what kind of resources, what books should they read? What blogs should they read?
I think today there is an ocean of different ones. So I don't know if there are better resources available, and I probably haven't been keeping track as much. But I think where I started is how to crack a PM interview. I'm sure all of you have heard of this. I think 2-3 key chapters in this to me were extremely insightful into understanding a product manager's journey from a structured point of view. Like I said, I was doing product management even before I knew I was doing it. What that book helped me do is create a structure around it to the same thing, right? So I think that's a great book. Very recently, I'm forgetting his name, Vivek Singh, somebody who basically put up technical skills that a PM would need. That's a tech simplified for a PM. It's one of those books that's trending on LinkedIn and it's doing the rounds. He's a colleague of mine from Flipkart, and I think that's a good book that can also provide you insights into technical, given that a lot of questions were around non-technical aspirants. So that would be a good starting point.
Great. I think that's largely it. There are a couple of questions related to the program. We'll take that up.
Sure. Thanks, folks.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Ashank. This was packed full of insights. The session was amazing.
Thank you so much, Vaibhav. Thanks, Ayush, for this. Thank you for everybody who tuned in and for participating, and very interesting insights and very interesting problem statements. I wish I was a WhatsApp PM to actually action on some of the insights that you gave. I know I've not been able to answer the exact metric. I'll probably leave that as a mystery. And for those of you who joined the MasterCamp, let's take that up as an exercise, and I'll start that session by answering what's a good measurability of this particular feature that we spoke about.
Absolutely.
Right. I'd like to stay connected. So I'm fairly regular on LinkedIn. So if there's anything that I can help you with, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And looking forward to seeing most of you, if not all of you, in the MasterCamp session at Masters Union. So thanks, everybody. And thanks, folks, for setting this up.
Thanks, Ashank. So there were a couple of questions related to the program. I'll take it directly from the chat and try and answer them. Is this program suitable for fresh undergraduates or people with less than 2 years of experience? Absolutely. So people who've just graduated, who are looking to move into APM roles also, I think the program is suitable. There are specific salary brackets for APM that we mentioned on the website itself. So could be a good anchor point for all of you. Devajyoti is asking, can you please share the details about the PM Bootcamp? So this is a 4-month program, placement focused. There are 4 different modules throughout a month-long module. And there are a few micro courses as well. I'll just paste the link to the landing page here. You can check out all the details there. And what is the headcount on intake? We are going to take 60 participants for this cohort. Sort of the fee, you can check out the fees and everything else related to the program on the website here. Is coming to the campus mandatory? Absolutely not. This is a 100% online program, but if you're in and around Delhi NCR, you can welcome to come down to the campus. When does the course start? I think the tentative start date is 23rd of April, but we'll confirm the exact start date in a few days. Is 4 months sufficient to get an APM role? Nilesh, sometimes 4 months is sufficient, sometimes even 4 years won't be sufficient. It's completely up to you and the amount of time and effort that you put in during the program. The more you put in, the higher the chances of you landing a role. Is this an executive program which one can do while working? Executive programs are a little different. This is an online cohort-based program. You can do this while working, while studying. That's not an issue at all. Prajwal is asking, where is the campus in Delhi? It's based in DLF Cyber Park in Gurgaon, right opposite Cyber City. Lakshmi is asking, when would this be the only cohort for this year? Lakshmi, we haven't made a decision on this as yet. We'll get back to you on that in a few months, maybe. We are not too sure. Kisle Kant is asking, are there any scholarships? Okay, there's a very interesting scholarship challenge that's running on. I'll just share the link in the chat. Maybe you'd like to participate in the challenge. Today is the last day of the challenge, incidentally. So I would suggest taking this challenge if you're looking for a scholarship in the program. Do you help with placements and job interview preparation? Sayed, that's the goal of the program throughout the 4 months. Besides the live sessions over the weekends where masters like Ashank, Rajshekhar Oja, all of these people would be taking the live sessions. We'll also be conducting a lot of career related sessions where we'll not only help you with the interview prep, we'll also help you figure out the kind of industry and job roles that are actually suitable for your particular profile. So there's a story that needs to be built out from your past experience and the future that you've planned for yourself. So all of that will be covered after 4 months, how you assist for placement. So as I said, during the 4 months itself, after the first month, we'll start with the career development journey. There'll be mentors and career coaches that would be assigned to you, and they'll be helping you with placement. Okay, we'll share the recording. We'll upload this on YouTube in a couple of days. We'll do that. You'll be based out in a different country soon. Can I still take this up remotely, or so that will completely depend on the time zone, Akash. I think if you go to US, then it might be a little difficult. But if you're in and around Asia, then I think it will be okay for you to attend. We will share the schedule also. So I think you should make a decision only after the timings are released, and we'll do that in a couple of days. Vipul will share the recording. Absolutely. There's no branch in Bangalore, Brunal, but we're going to have a number of meetups, local city meetups. So if there are enough people in Bangalore, we'll make sure we'll arrange for these local city meetups. Please provide the portfolio ideas. Okay, so an important part of the program is building out your portfolio. So for that, you'll have to join in the program, or like you can reach out to us with whatever your portfolio is currently. So do send us your portfolio and we'll be happy to help you out with it. Brunal is saying there are a lot of people who are enthusiastic in Bangalore, including a lot of Masters Union alumni. We hear you, Brunal, for sure. We'll do a number of city meetups in Bangalore in that case. Do we need to finish the scholarship today itself or only registration? So Sayyad, there's a 15-minute quiz. So take that quiz today. Today is the last day for the quiz. There is a 1-hour simulation. If you qualify for the quiz, then you qualify for a simulation. There's a 1-hour product simulation, very interesting, that you can take up till the 6th of April. So just take 15 minutes today and take the quiz. It's very interesting. Total fee amount needs to be submitted in one go? Absolutely not. So you can take up 3 months, 6 months, 9 month, 12-month EMI options, no cost EMI options that can sort you out. Saurabh, this is answer to your question. Kailash has taken the simulation challenge today. 6th of April or 7th morning is when we'll share the shortlist for the people, and we'll also be sharing a coupon code so that you don't need to pay the application fee for the program. Same kind of program inside with very low cost. So what is the difference? Puneet, I recommend you join the inside program in that case. I think if that helps you out, absolutely no worries there. We've received a overwhelming response for this program. So definitely recommend go there instead. Vipul, how to approach employer on LinkedIn with resume or portfolio? Vipul, so just letting you in on a secret, what we do is we send out the application in the form of a resume, a cover letter, and the portfolio, and a sample problem statement that So for example, if you're looking to apply to cred, for example, so solve a sample problem statement for them, showing your thought process along with your LinkedIn profile, your resume and your portfolio. That really helps get a interview call at least. After that, it's completely up to you how you communicate, how you demonstrate your thought process, the depth of knowledge that you have. So all of that comes in for that. I'm selected for the simulation round, right? Thanks, but I was expecting to convince me to. No, Puneet, absolutely not. We've done no marketing for the program. We don't need to convince anybody. If you think this will add value to you, definitely join in the program, because the ROI is such that you will be joining very good startups and corporates. So the program pays for itself very quickly. So that's why the fee structure is such. I'm a chemical engineer passing out in January. Any benefits from me? So benefits as such, every company needs product managers today, Shreyansh. So if you think you can identify a few companies in a particular, so FMCG companies, D2C companies, direct to consumer companies, a lot of these companies do require product managers. So that might be helpful for those companies, but you'll have to kind of understand what your background is, the kind of thought process that even Ashank shared in the slides today. So just make a decision based on that if this is the right program for you. Vipul, just check out the website, please. That'll help. Surya, for this, I think stay tuned. We're doing a session tomorrow at 5 p.m. just for that's specifically designed how to crack a PM interview. So definitely join in tomorrow and we'll answer your question in detail with a few case studies. How an actual PM, what was her thought process, and it's going to be a really amazing session tomorrow. So please join in tomorrow for the answer to your question. Kailash, when will the career session start? After 4 months? So during the 4 months, by the time you finish the course, you'll already have a job in hand. If you put in the right amount of effort, you come to the classes, all of those things are a prerequisite for that. I think we've answered all the questions. We're going to close the session now. Thank you for joining in. Thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone.